Hey everyone, welcome back to the Simplified. In the previous lecture, we analyzed the theme 2 part of our part 1 of the Indian Constitution lecture series, where we analyzed the impact of colonialism on the shaping of Indian state. In the previous lecture, we studied about four dimensions. The first was the governance blueprint. The second we studied was the legal framework. The third was the economic structure. In this lecture, uh, we will continue with our theme two, that is the impact of colonialism on the shaping of Indian state, a multidimensional analysis, and we will move ahead with our other dimensions in this lecture. So, without wasting any time, let's move ahead with the topic. The fifth dimension in the multidimensional analysis is the social engineering, uh, which was done by the British colonial system. Uh, in this heading, we will look at the how the British policies were responsible for the cleavages that were happened in our society in the 20th century and the late 19th century also. So we know that before 1857, British colonialism supported the socio-religious reform in the form of sati abolition, increasing the age of marriages for women, etc. So the pre-1857 time was said to be a supportive time for the leaders like Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Isuchan Vidyasagar, because they were getting the support of Britishers in their efforts towards reforming the society and making it uh, more open towards women empowerment. So this was the case before 1857 revolt, but after the 1857, some lessons that were learned uh, by the Britishers, and one of them was that they halted the socio-religious reforms which they were doing before the revolt, out of the fear that that will hurt the religious sentiment of the masses, and that could again create the ruckus for the Britishers. So, post 1857, British socio-religious policy was based on the divide and rule principle. So, out of the fear of the revolt, they understood that the Hindus and Muslims unity uh, can prove dangerous for them, and their most precious jewel, India, that can be lost because of that unity. So post 1857, they halted that socio-religious reform process and started policy that was based on the divide and rule principle. And following this principle, colonial rulers through censuses, we know that the after the 1857 they started the census, and then starting from the 1881 the decadal census started. So it was based on this principle, and through census they initiated a social engineering that helped in creating the supra-local caste and religious categories through which the colonial state could distribute differential patronage. So we know that the census that were happening was recording demographic data from the citizenry for the first time in our modern India. So through that, as historian Sugata Bose explains, that the Britishers created the supra-local caste in the form of the depressed caste and the religious categories like the minorities status to the Muslims. through which they created these categories to distribute their differential patronage, and and uh, can bargain with the different communities and the sections of our country. So, while dividing and categorizing their subjects according to the new principle of social enumeration, that was the census, the British Raj also had the overriding character of an imperial power, which set apart its subject in a block, like I said, in the different communities and as a block. So, with that and their interest fundamentally agnostic to those of the rulers. So it was based on the divide and rule principle, uh, and the the post 1857 policies, uh, giving special patronage to a certain section of the society to get their support in ruling this land. And the impact of all these policies were found in the constitution framing, as well as the post independence policy of governments. So thus, fearing the resurgence of communalism out of these policies, India, even after the independence, walked slowly on the road to social religious reforms, especially within the minorities. For example, it took almost 70 years for Muslim women to get rid of the practice of triple talaq. Only in the 2018, that practice got banned, as well as the dilution of Hindu code bills in 1955 also speaks loudly of the government's careful approach in implementing socio-religious reforms after independence. So these activities of the government after the independence uh, shows that how the fear of resurgence of communalism was there due to the impact of the colonial era British policies, which was based on divide and principle rule. So this was the colonial social engineering uh, of Britishers in India, whose impact the we was seeing in the post-independence Indian political structure and Indian social structure. So let's move ahead with the dimension. The next is related with the nature of the post-independent state, that in some manner mirrors the British imperial state. So, in what sense it does, we will look at in this dimension. So we know that colonialism is characterized by a paternalistic imperial state which controlled the lives of its citizens on the assumption that it knew better. And it is the basic definition of colonialism, which is based on the white man's burden theory, which means that the colonizers has the responsibility to civilize the orientalist persons, people and population. So uh, uh, following this paternalistic imperial state, some of the political scientists like Neera Chandoke accuses the modern Indian state of carrying forward this legacy of paternal state by acting like a paternal state which looks upon its citizens as subjects of welfare rather than as equals in democracy. Like the approach of the post-independent Indian government uh, was he it was seeing the subjects and its citizens as a subject of welfare rather than as equals in a democracy. And similarly, uh, the argument that it was the institution of parliament and not the the people themselves. Before the independence, it was the British colonial state, and after independence, it was the institution of parliament that would be the primary agent of a new society, where people themselves were merely passive recipients of the benefits of the state rather than agents of their future. So these two arguments uh, are followed and accuses the Indian state or the post-Indian state to carrying forward the legacy of modern state, carrying forward the legacy of paternal state. This was the sixth point where we saw that the nature of paternalistic imperial state got translated in some manner uh, in the post-independent India also. Moving ahead with the seventh dimension, uh, the next is in line is the external affairs. Uh, the We know that the Britishers ruled the whole subcontinent up till uh, the the mid 20th century, and when they left, they they carved out the borders as uh, irrational engineer of the border lining. So due to that irrational drawing of borders by the Britishers, the territorial disputes were uh, were were occurred between the states that was arose when the Britishers left the subcontinent, and this created a permanent war-like situation in the high Himalayas, like between the India and Pakistan in the 1948, then again in the 1965, and between the India and China in 1962. So that was a there was a permanent war-like situation in the high Himalayas, and the the supplementary effect of this permanent war-like situation in the northern part of the country was that the the this shaped the defense priorities of the newborn state that has the limited resources to spend on his military. So it is spent uh, on larger share with the army, the landed army, and resulted in the overlooking of the vast Indian Ocean theater and naval modernization. And this overlooking can still be felt in the need of the current situation in which we are facing a stir competition from the Chinese naval capacity in the Indian Ocean and the in larger Indian Indo-Pacific uh, theater. So the colonial impact uh, on the external affairs and the defense priorities uh, resulted in this overlooking of the larger Indian Ocean theater, and the skewed uh, tilt of the defense priorities towards the army, the landed army, was was happened because of the permanent war-like situation in the high Himalayas. The third in the line of the external affairs impact was the migration. We know that the Britishers traded slaves in the Caribbean, in the American continent, in the Australia, in Southeast Asia, uh, in Europe also, and apart from the indentured labor, there was the voluntary migration also. So due to both of these, the diaspora of Indian community got spread all over the world, and that set the stage for the large and powerful Indian diaspora that we see in the current. So it had some positive impact on the part of migration, while it was during the colonial era based on the slave trade. So this was the impact of colonialism on the external affairs, where we saw the territorial disputes that created a permanent war-like situation in our subcontinent. The defense priorities of our country immediately after the post-independence, and the subsequent decades also, and the migration which spread the diaspora of Indian community all over the world. So this was the impact of colonialism on the shaping of Indian state. That was our theme second of the historical underpinning part. Uh, Tomorrow, or the day after tomorrow, we will see the theme fourth, that is the scheme of representation that was initiated by the 1909, 1919, and 1935 acts of the colonial era legislations. So this was it for the theme 2 of the historical underpinning. Uh, the conclusion of this In conclusion, we can say that the impact of colonialism uh, cannot be understood in only black and white terms, because the long period of colonialism India spent, uh, and the difficulties it endured, uh, makes it much more complex to understand on the various dimensions, starting from the political governance, uh, economic structure, social structure, foreign policy, etc. So this is an important topic to understand for the political science and polity students. So this was it for today. Let's meet next time in and we will cover next lecture the fourth theme. So thank you so much for listening. Have a good day.